Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. So I'm looking at B.O.D.Y by Aomi Mori, and originally this was going to be part of another Shonen versus Shoujo video. I think I'm going to use Shonen versus Shoujo as a way to review more manga more quickly, especially if it's a fun manga, but I don't have like an astute 20-minute thesis about it. I'll just let you know what I'm reading and, why it's fun or why it's kind of dumb. And then I noticed something right at the end of this one, which changed the whole video. So this is going to be a little dangerous because this is one of those where I've got a few semi-related thoughts that are important, and I don't want to lose the important thought. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the important thought at the beginning for those people who watch, 5 minutes. And then all you cool cats who stay for all the summa tangentum, then we'll have some fun. But I want to get the important thing out of the way. So I'm reading it. It's kind of like, whatever. It's okay. I don't hate it. I don't love it. And I get right to the end. And here are the credits. I want to show you this so you know I'm not crazy. English adaptation, Kelly Sue DeConnick. Now, if you don't know that name, Kelly Sue DeConnick is a big quote-unquote person in the Western comics market. You see her in a lot of documentaries and interviews. She's currently working on something called Bleep Planet. It's the B word. And so she's someone who's sort of noticeably vocal about feminism in comics. Now, the reason this surprised me is right after I had gotten to the end of this, of course, I always look at comics through the progressive lens, through the intersectional feminist lens. And what I realized at the end of this is I asked myself, why did Kelly Sue DeConnick work on a patriarchal book? Why did she work on a book which teaches girls to have internalized misogyny? This doesn't make sense to me. And then the thing that hit me like a ton of bricks is, it's not like I didn't know this, it's just this reminded me of this so well. If about half of people who talk about problematic elements in stories and male gaze and patriarchy sincerely believe what they're talking about and they actually kind of understand what they're talking about, then another half of them only say it or do it because they think they're supposed to do it, or they want to make a little money in the SJW market, or they're generally sympathetic. Maybe they're like big on abortion rights and pink pussy hats, but they are not down for the revolution. So what B.O.D.Y has become now is this is a good data point for why on earth would someone say they are against patriarchy, say they are against the institutions which oppress women in movies and comics and fiction, yet be involved in projects like this? Well, because Kelly Sue DeConnick wanted to make a paycheck. Kelly Sue DeConnick was okay working on a popular manga project, trying to make some money and have a life as a good capitalist. But and maybe at some point while reading this, maybe her feminist lenses came on and she was disturbed by it, but she wasn't disturbed enough to actually like stamp her foot down and stop reading. There we go. So when I was in SJW art school, I was kind of like a sincere and earnest person. So I took people, kind of at face value. And so what I kind of learned is that that's not how everybody walks through the world or walks through life. So a teacher might be really big on revolutionary avant-garde art until the student's revolutionary avant-garde art is making life more difficult to the teacher. Then suddenly the radical revolutionary hat comes off and the administrative authority figure hat comes right back on. So I'm trying to think what I can tell of this story. So pretty much a student made a artwork that was supposed to be representative of rape culture, and part of this artwork started to rot and stink and create a health hazard, and we heard about it all through the school. Like that got shut down and cleaned up hard, and it had all the elements of a proper triggering, because that meant that, oh, don't you have a problem with rape culture? Don't you think it's important for art students to be able to speak out against rape culture? What are you really just worried about a little measly health hazard over a few million germs? What's your problem, patriarchy? So the point is that I think for a lot of people, the language of social justice is something convenient for them. It's fun to tweet #resist. It's not fun to actually start a literal revolution against literal Hitler. Okay, a lot this is where maybe my religious faith comes in. A lot of YouTube atheists have been talking about feminism. This is one of the things that got me interested in YouTube in the first place, was all of this intellectual dialogue going on. And a lot of them will make the comparison between modern feminism and the religious right. So they'll say, oh, it's a religion. Oh, it's like a cult. It has a concept of original sin. And I think there's some truth to that, but I think that a lot of the YouTube atheists, because they're atheists, it may be hard for them to empathize with the power of religious thinking and the significance of religious thinking. And this is maybe a reason why I disagree with feminists, but I actually have a lot of empathy and sympathy with SJWs and feminists. Because what I realized is, for someone like Kelly Sue DeConnick, working on a book like B.O.D.Y must create a lot of cognitive dissonance. Since I'm making a Christian parallel, it's sort of like trying to be a Christian and then pretend the Old Testament doesn't matter and you can just forget about it. And a lot of Christians can get away with that until someone actually starts asking them tough questions and challenging them. Cognitive dissonance works until you're put into an environment where people start questioning you and challenging you and, you know, engaging in the Socratic method with you. And then you got to think through this stuff. I think that being a contemporary feminist works so long as so long as no famous celebrity makes B.O.D.Y like the hot topic of the day to complain about internalized misogyny and patriarchy. And the point is, someone like Kelly Sue DeConnick is one triggering away from being a pariah in the comics industry, and I think she knows that. So I've been talking for 6 minutes. That was the important point. There we go. We got the important point out. Now I'm going to go on all my tangents. From far away by Kyoko Hikawa. I've been making fun of myself because it seems like every single manga review I start talking about From Far Away by accident, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that it's actually a good illustration of the points. Tangent time, I love it. All right, so From Far Away is an example of a story where it's powerful, it's beautiful, it's like The Hobbit. J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, he wrote it for his children, but if you return to The Hobbit as an adult, you pick up on all of these great themes in The Hobbit, and you can see how something like that was necessary for J.R.R. Tolkien to start writing The Lord of the Rings. I think that C.S. Lewis famously had to tell J.R.R. Tolkien he should spend a little less time working on all the particulars of the Elvish language and should actually write more stories and write a plot, right? So that's the beauty of a really good piece of children's literature, is that it can be the spark of something more. It's a child's introduction to the world of literature. An adult can return to it and appreciate these themes anew. So From Far Away is that. B.O.D.Y, I call this kind of like the girl equivalent of a Transformers movie where, I'm a guy. I'll sometimes watch a stupid movie with guys beating each other up because it's fun to watch guys beating each other up. But I think a lot of chick flicks and romantic comedies and things like B.O.D.Y, they're the girl equivalent of that. I like to watch robots smashing into each other, and I think girls like to watch, cutesy high school romances. So the point, feminism. From Far Away, both of these are things where a feminist could come to this and say, oh, I see problematic elements. I see damsels in distress. I see patriarchy. But From Far Away is a story where I think that most decent people, people who read it and connect with the characters would immediately be able to see the problem. They'd see that you'd have to take something out of context. If you took a panel of Noriko in danger out of context, you could say, she's a damsel in distress. This teaches girls that they're just objects waiting to be saved by men, right? But someone who actually read the whole story and connected with the characters would be able to see through that nonsense. It would take a very committed type of feminist to move past their connection with these physical characters and then only look at it as an example of patriarchy. So in contrast to that, because B.O.D.Y isn't as high, powerful fiction, it's I think it'd be easier for feminists to bash on this. And they actually might have a point. So one of the reasons I empathize with feminists a lot is I can sort of see what it is they see that they don't like. But I think the problem isn't that they're always wrong. I think the problem is that they don't have a consistent enough standard to give anyone peace of mind. Everyone has to have cognitive dissonance at some point in feminism because it sets the people who want to destroy the institutions, burn down the patriarchy, at war with the people who want to enjoy the comic industry, enjoy the art, enjoy some fun stories. And without a consistent standard, without something understandable and concrete that can guide you into how do I make good art, how do I tell appropriate stories, you're never going to be at peace. Man, I love tangents. There was some other tangent about From Far Away, but we're going to move past that because I haven't even opened B.O.D.Y yet. 10 minutes, we are the Tangent Channel. All right. Pretty much B.O.D.Y is about, I've forgotten everything already about what the heck B.O.D.Y was about. The girl is kind of interested in the boy, and she finds out that he is a host. And to my understanding, being a host or hostess in Japan is like working at Hooters, but it's for classier people than Hooters is. And it's sort of like saying, I may or may not be a prostitute. I may not be a prostitute. Maybe all I'm doing is I'm just like pouring tea for people and having pleasant conversation with them because I'm such a beautiful person. Or maybe I'm going for after hours work to do some other stuff, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, hint, hint. So when she finds out that the boy is a host, she's kind of disgusted by this. The thing is, I'm not sure he's a prostitute. I don't know enough about Japan to be 100% sure, but there's enough of a chance of it that she's kind of like turned off by him instantly. She thought he was innocent. Turns out that he's a bit dangerous and naughty. Now, then when he realizes that, he decides he's going to work extra hard to win her heart. And what it reminds me of is The Taming of the Shrew a bit, where she keeps trying to brush him off or say, I'm not interested or you're disgusting. And because she's not experienced and because he's experienced, he knows how to turn that around on her. So, she'll chase after him and say, why have you been ignoring me? Well, that was part of his head game. He said, I'm going to win your heart. And then he ignored her, which made her wonder what the heck was going on. And she chased him down. She said, I'll tell you what, if you win the race, then I'll go on a date with you. But if you lose the race, you never have to talk to me again. He said, okay. And then he worked really hard to win the race, and he didn't win the race. So she ran to look for him because she was worried he was hurt, and that he turned that around on her. Oh, I see you cared enough to come check on me. So it's about a really confident guy almost toying with a inexperienced girl's heart. And I can kind of see how like a girl would be like, oh, he's such a cute boy. Oh, that's so funny. He's tricking her, right? But then you can also look at it through the feminist lens and say, patriarchy, she's been dehumanized. Oh, the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test is named for Alison Bechdel, who's kind of really big in intellectual comics. I've got a great essay from a postmodernist about Alison Bechdel we'll get in later. But the Bechdel test, it can be summed up as, for a movie to be good, from a feminist perspective, it has to have more than one woman who talk to each other about something other than boys. And this is an illustration of something I think is actually a pretty good feminist idea. Like, if you're writing a story, it might be good for you to have more than one female character for most of the time. Obviously there are exceptions to the general rule, but as a general rule, good to have more than one female character. Yeah, it's good to have your female characters talk to each other, and it's good for them to talk about something other than boys. That's a principle I could actually get behind. But the problem is the execution is different. In execution, in theory, it's good, but in execution, it ends up being a kind of lecturing, this is bad. I will not go to this movie. You're bad for having made it. So the problem with this is I don't think this passes the Bechdel test. It's all about cute boys and how fab they look, and can I get their attention? Are they paying attention to me? What about that other boy? I'm in love, covered in hearts. So something like this fails the Bechdel test. It's harmless. It's silly. It's kind of goofy. There's a few little teasing gags about maybe one of the boys is kind of sexually interested in her, but she's pure and innocent, so she doesn't respond to that. It's the kind of thing I would say is kind of dumb and harmless. But then when the feminist perspective and the feminist lens comes in, then I start wanting to defend it because I want little girls to be able to read their dumb little romances that aren't exactly my cup of tea. But there we go. If it's really true that a silly little girl's high school romance is oppressing women and teaching women that they're objects who are the playthings of men and actually creating patriarchy. It would be wrong to write these. It would be wrong to read these. It would be wrong to market these. Kelly Sue DeConnick was perfectly fine working on the English adaptation staff for something that is more problematic than Cinderella. Like last week, it was Cinderella and Snow White that everyone was getting mad about. This is way more problematic than Cinderella and Snow White, gang, because it's effectively, it is the taming of the shrew. It's the girl who isn't prepared to deal with like a boy, and the boy is really good at winding her up or being 2 steps ahead of her. That's the point of it. The point of the romance is he's a sophisticated boy who's kind of a Lothario. He's really good with women. I've talked enough about it. I give it a lukewarm recommendation. Like I'd rather give my daughter something like From Far Away, because it transcends like the silly boy story, silly girl story. This is the kind of thing where I'd be okay if my daughter read it, but I wouldn't actively encourage her to read it, because it's just kind of silly candy. Like it's Dragon Ball Z for girls. Kind of silly, kind of fun, whatever. About making manga, I thought this was really sweet. So Ao draws herself as kind of like an onion creature, and then she has like all this great little list of the tools of the trade she used. She does all her work herself without assistance. That's one of the other things, is even when I see something that's kind of like goofy, a goofy manga that I don't really click with, I still have a lot of respect for it. Like Kelly Sue DeConnick is someone who's a big deal in the Western comics market because, I don't know, she's worked on Bitch Planet. Oh, I said it by accident. I'm sorry. That was the naughty word for the comic that Kelly Sue DeConnick is famous for working on. But then someone like Ao Mimori, right? This is like a pretty average, run-of-the-mill shoujo comic. But then I have respect over how she's drawing everything, right? Like the fact that she's able to produce 13 volumes this big on her onesie, that kind of earns her cred that allegedly big deals in the Western comic market have. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I've just returned to manga again and again, is so many of the art, the average mediocre manga story, I have more respect for it than the big deal. I love a lot of Western comics. It's not right for me to say I like manga more than Western comics. I think there's more vivaciousness and more energy in the manga market than in the Western market, where there are very, very few greats in the Western market who I think transcend to art. But even like the average Joe whatever in the manga market can at least deliver something interesting. All right, that was a nice long tangent. How B.O.D.Y got its title, I thought this was a silly little fun story. I was interested to see some of these other female manga artists appearing in her stories about, who she hung out with, had drinks with, gave her ideas. Matsu Koto, I'll have to look up that. And who's that? Mari Fujimura. All right, I'm going to go look for them. I think it's kind of cute how they all sit around talking about manga and joking about how the name doesn't really mean anything. It's just sweet. That's the point. So Gail Simone, that's the point. Gail Simone has kind of like crafted this teehee, I'm a silly aunt persona. And I've noticed a lot of shoujo manga artists seem to have that. Maybe it's a consequence of, drawing an intense amount of work all by yourself in a room. But when they come off as teehee, I'm kind of random and silly and such a cutesy girl. I believe that's the way they are in real life, and I believe that reflects what they actually enjoy about the world. It doesn't come off as trying to be a stupid little kid just because that's cute. And I think that SJWs look at this and they say, oh, I'll be cutesy and stupid and silly all the time. But the point of something like this is these artists have a way of looking at the world, and their silliness is just one little part of it. They'll have like 2 pages of silliness and then like a volume of seriousness or semi-serious silly love story. But anyway, enough. 19 minutes. I told you guys, Summa Tangentum. That's why I put the important thing at the front. All right, so B.O.D.Y, I can't strongly recommend it. It's harmless. It was kind of fun, kind of silly. I don't think I'm going to be getting volume 2, but the most shocking thing for me was seeing Kelly Sue DeConnick's name on it after reading the whole volume, thinking about how problematic this was through the feminist lens. So I'm #1 Marmaduke fan, and I'm a better feminist than Kelly Sue DeConnick. I love you guys. I love my patrons on Patreon, and I will catch you later.